Okay, now the IEA has, well, we were founded in 1955, and really from the very beginning we had a strong interest in educational choice, and we're sitting actually in the Selden room, and my predecessor Arthur Selden was a great proponent of the voucher and voucher systems in education, and actually when Rhodes Boyson was in the education department and Keith Joseph Secretary of State for Education and Mrs Thatcher was Prime Minister, the IEA really thought they had won this argument. Indeed, they probably had won the argument, but unfortunately the politics went against them, and we had, instead of the promotion of educational choice in the 80s and 90s, a situation where actually the regulation of education increased and increased. Milton Friedman was an IEA author, and he wrote regularly, of course, and is credited with inventing the idea of education vouchers, although, as mentioned at the CMRE lecture, really the credit goes to John Stuart Mill there. And also Professor Sir Alan Peacock was a great friend of the IEA for many years until he died a couple of years ago, Professor of Economics at the LSE and a member of the Liberal Party, a long-time academic advisor to the Liberal Party, and he wrote an awful lot about education choice and education vouchers as well. So the IEA has a long history in this field. And in fact, it was a conversation about 17, 18 years ago, I think, that I had with David Willetts, which possibly led to a change in tack in the policy of the Conservative Party on these kind of issues. So everybody who had been wanting education choice in the Conservative Party had been promoting voucher-type systems which gave parents more choice. And at the same time, the sort of supply side, if you like, of education had been ignored entirely during much of that period. I mean, not by economists at the IEA, but certainly by politicians. And I pointed out to David Willetts that this is that liberalising demand without liberalising supply was actually just a recipe for creating queues and creating a sort of situation which the better informed, the middle class, those who could afford to move house more easily than others and so on, could take advantage of the system. And if anything, it was going to bring give education choice a bad name. And I think it was that conversation, and then a lot of work with Policy Exchange and other think tank did afterwards, which led to the movement of the Conservative Party policy away a little bit from autonomy and freedom of choice to parents, very important though that is, and somewhat ignored by the government, though that is, towards liberalisation of the supply side, free schools movement, and so on. And into that environment stepped James, I think in about 2011. He'd written a paper for the Adam Smith Institute on profit-making schools, and we had a discussion, and he formed the Centre for Market Reform in Education, and we found a place in our building to help him, nurture him, help him develop contacts, allow him to rent free for a few years, and to actually launch, I think, a very successful centre and research programme under the direction of Gabriel Salgren, who was an IEA, a very noisy IEA intern for a year or so before he joined CMRE. So I think with that, I should hand over to Gabriel or James? James, who's going to talk a little bit more about CMRE.
Thank you, Philip, for your kind words. Yes, so I'm James Croft, and welcome to all of you as the founder and director of CMRE and the convener of this conference. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you this morning to our School Choice Week conference. First School Choice Week conference. School Choice, Opportunity and Equity. And I think it promises to be an engaging day, exploring some of the challenges of progressing school choice reform. CMRE, a little bit about CMRE. Our remit, or the remit we rather set ourselves, has been to address what we describe as the structurally misaligned and inadequate incentives that characterise education provision in this country, but also internationally in many systems around the world, in respect of both improving attainment amongst young people as also against a range of other measures of socioeconomic status and well-being, and as importantly, their effectiveness for improving equity. Now, while there's much that can be done to improve on such measures at the school and classroom level, such problems being essentially economic and structural, and thus also culturally embedded, require reform at the macro level. We feel this perspective is conspicuously underemphasised in the education policy debate, and so we've set about trying to bring what is now a substantive and growing literature on the impacts of choice and competition reforms and other reforms addressed to improving incentives for teachers, parents and pupils to wider public attention. Now, while the last few years have been something of a fertile period politically for change in some of the areas of school choice, for a variety of reasons that will doubtless become clear during the course of the day, school choice has dropped off the political agenda somewhat lately, we feel. We believe, however, that it's an unfinished, or perhaps better, an ongoing project. And for these reasons, it seems the right time for us to instigate this conference and indeed to develop a focus week around the policy challenges associated with this package of reforms. When we speak about school choice, as is evident in the programme that you have been turning the pages of as you enjoyed your coffee and settled down this morning, we're talking about a whole package of measures. All too often school choice is associated with the voucher alone, and it's seen as being rather as something of a silver bullet solution, which of course it's not. It's far more complicated than that, and I hope we're going to do justice, I'm sure we will, to the complexities of the issues today. Some of you will be aware that we inaugurated last year a lecture also. Indeed, our inaugural lecturer, Professor Sir Julian Legrand, is joining us later today. The second annual Freedom Lecture on education reform was given this year by Professor Paul Peterson, the director of the Harvard Programme on Education, Policy and Governance, also Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution, Stanford University, and Editor-in-Chief of Education Next, a journal which will be known to some of you. Paul overviewed the research in his lecture, which he gave on Tuesday, on choice and competition effects in schooling, with particular attention to the importance of opening up to challenger schools in addressing disadvantage. If you missed it, the recording will shortly be available from the website and will be versioning it for publication also, so we'll be able to get that in the coming months. Today, we address the range of issues, though, as I say, relating to the choice paradigm, from new schools to funding, admissions, curriculum and qualifications, and information for parents and others also, to consider the viability of the school choice agenda going forward. Now, as you turn the pages of the programme, you'll see that we have an accomplished lineup of speakers: academics, policymakers, thinkers, politicians, sector stakeholders, and practitioners. They'll be introduced to you throughout the day by the panel chairs. We're grateful to the Friedman Foundation for Educational Choice and to the IEA for making this possible, and the sponsors and event partners that have lent their support. These logos are displayed here. Reform Think Tank for arranging the panel on admissions reform, and to sponsors PLMR, FASNA and Cambridge Assessment. Now, before I introduce Gabriel, just one or two other things to mention. We do have a couple of changes to the programme. Notably, we're very pleased to welcome Professor Victor Levy to be with us today. The session which you have as next steps for school supply, we have changed. It's now going to be a presentation by Professor Levy on the long-run effects of free choice among public schools, college attainment, earnings and social outcomes at adulthood, which is a based on research that Professor Lee has been doing over many years, but more recent findings in respect of long-term effects from choice reforms that were undertaken in Tel Aviv. So that session is somewhat altered, but very, very important area of emerging research, and we're very keen to give the space to it in the agenda today. Henrik, you will start into it. I have withdrawn from my panel. And in addition, Tim Oates, who was to chair our session 6 on choice in curriculum and qualification and census apologies for absence, and Bennett Steinberg, his colleague, Group Director for Public Affairs at Cambridge Assessment, will be chairing that session later in the afternoon. I think that's all on changes to the programme. We are running, as you'll see, quite a tight schedule on the day. One or two of the breaks between sessions are quite short. So if I can ask chairs to not be backwards about coming forwards at the end of sessions when you're the next up, and speakers also will get you mic'd up and underway. But there are a couple of short 5-minute breaks between sessions, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, that will need to time. Philip mentions codes or access to the toilet facilities. If you can use the back doors and the access via the courtyard when we're in session, that would be great, because there isn't space to accommodate flow here. And finally, the Wi-Fi access. IEA Wi-Fi is your access point, and Welcome 100 is the password if you wish to gain access. And please do use social media to put your comments forth into the Twitter sphere. School Choice UK is our hashtag. So without further ado, Gabriel, my colleague Gabriel and I found ourselves here at the IEA, as Philip mentioned, both working in similar areas in education reform, and we've now been working together with this project for 3 years. Gabriel has published a book which I want to bring to your attention, which you'll find copies of out in the foyer. This was published by CMRE, and effectively it is an agenda-setting publication outlining the areas in which we wanted to explore further over the subsequent years, and have done so in part of the research report. So those copies are free for you to take away, and do so. Gabriel, and come and speak to us. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy your day.